Yo, I'm the big guy, Ryback, and this is exactly how much WWE Royalties actually pays. So this was my last WWE royalty payment that I got the other month. A couple interesting things here to look at. One, the name Ryan Reeves. They have refused to acknowledge me as Ryback Reeves ever since I legally had changed my name on any piece of, whether it's through the emails with their attorneys on the various things that we had going on or stuff like this. They keep it as Ryan Reeves. So I've been off TV 7.5+ years. And when I left WWE, they did not make any new Ryback merchandise. And after winning the trademark, they are now never allowed to make anything new with the Ryback trademark. But this right here is from the third quarter of October 2023, in which I made $289.88. Now, what did WWE actually make for the quarter? On this sheet right here, WWE made $3,579.79 on the Ryback brand for the third quarter of October 2023. So I did the logical thing on this, and I gave my good friend, Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner, a call, and I go, Scotty, can you help me kind of figure out this math of like what WWE makes compared to what talents make on the royalty payments? So Big Papa Pump goes, big guy, easy mathematics. He goes, you take the 3579.79 and you divide it by the 289.88, and then you get the rate at which WWE, what they make to what WWE talents keep. And he goes, holla if you hear me. So when you do the Steiner math on this, you get a number of 12.34. And what you get with that is for essentially every $1 million that WWE makes on royalties, they pay the talent $81,000, roughly. This is all ballpark. For every $10 million a WWE brand makes the WWE, they pay that talent $810,000. And for every $100 million a talent or brand makes the WWE on royalties, they get $8,103,000, roughly. Now, when you have all your talent, you have a plethora of talent making the organization millions upon millions of dollars per quarter, you get a greedy son of a bitch billionaire hoarding the profits who's probably going to get forced out of his own company altogether and ultimately busted by the FBI and hopefully serve the rest of his life behind bars. And that's the last bite. Feed me more.
Cream, precious metals or the crypto things. Your bars are light like the one that's on a Smith machine. But my Maxwell and I ain't speaking about the pretty wings. Watch.
Years since I have wrestled for the WWE, I still.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about Ryback complaining about WWE royalties. So let's get right into it. By now, if I'm smart, and I'm pretty sure I am, I've showed you already the TikTok video of Ryback complaining about WWE's royalties, but I also have already inserted Maven talking about why the royalties are what they are. Now, I really don't need to go beyond that, but I think I want to, because there are still some things that I want to discuss, and I want, to actually make this subject mean something. So for starters, this isn't the first time that Ryback has complained about royalties. So let's talk about, in 2019, Ryback put out an interview with Raj Giri of Wrestling Inc., where he said this: the numbers are in the contract, and the numbers are completely screwed up. The numbers are horrible. Now, outside of someone like Brock that negotiated a better deal and owns his name, trademarks, different things, and was able to negotiate a better deal, 90% of the talent does not have the power to negotiate a better deal, and they keep them in a position where they don't have any negotiating power. If you do question your percentages, they will just pick someone else. The thing is, $30 t-shirt, they are selling, you're making $1 or under $1 a shirt, somewhere in that vicinity. Wrestlers as independent contractors should be able to negotiate. WWE will say anyone can negotiate. I can tell you firsthand that if you do that, you're not going to make any money. You're not going to be used. So everybody signs the contract and just goes along with it because that is what everyone else has done. Well, I can tell you this is false. Again, when you're listening to somebody tell their side of the story, they're obviously going to babyface themselves, especially if somebody has a bias like Ryback does. there have been wrestlers who have made tons of money off royalties from WWE. And basically, and I'm not talking about main event wrestlers. I'm talking about guys like Zack Ryder, who built his entire life off of royalties from t-shirts and other gimmicks, action figures, etc. that WWE sold. He was in video games for years, that kind of stuff. You can make a ton of money off royalties. Ryback saying that you only make $1 off of a t-shirt is pretty ridiculous. But if that were the case, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's talk about Ryback's TikTok video, because he showed the statement that he made only $289 in royalties. Now, we've heard Chris Jericho, Kevin Nash, Jim Cornette, all of these people absolutely have meltdowns about why the royalties are what they are. The one thing all of these people have in common is none of them are current talents. None of them are current talents, or even recently current talents. Jericho hasn't been in WWE in over 5 years. Jim Cornette hasn't worked there in over a decade. Kevin Nash has not been an active talent in over a decade. Now, he probably still has a Legends contract, and they still do sell NWO merchandise. So he might be the closest in terms of somebody who complains about royalties that actually worked there. But Ryback said it out of his own mouth in his TikTok video, two things. One, he has not worked there in 7 years. Two, they cannot make Ryback merchandise because he owns the trademark. So how much is he expecting to make off of royalties when they cannot make products with your name on it? They cannot make products with your name and face on it or anything associated with you. So how in the world are they going to increase your royalties? Seems pretty ridiculous. Now, that's the first thing. And that in and of itself is pretty much Ryback is a dumbass. All right. How can they make more products if you say that they cannot, you control the intellectual property and you say that they can't? Okay, well then guess what? You have to get whatever they're going to get out of whatever they make. So if you watch through the entire video, you know that he flipped to the second page. And if you get around his big bald ass head and you look at actually what he was talking about in terms of what royalties are taken or given to him, you will see 100% of the things on that list are DVDs. 100% are DVDs. And not only are they DVDs, they are DVDs for other people. Shield DVDs, Jericho DVDs, WrestleMania DVDs, DVDs for other people that might feature Ryback matches. And he gets a royalty for that. But here's two problems. One, the DVD is not his. It's somebody else's. So it's not like it's featuring him. It's not the same as they're selling t-shirts or action figures or whatever with his name and face on it and he doesn't get a big cut of it. This is literally him being a part of somebody else's product. Two, DVD sales in 2023, DVDs are virtually obsolete. Why are we still having the conversation about DVDs and DVD sales in 2023 when the network killed the DVD? And you have different places like Best Buy and Walmart now saying they're not going to sell physical copies of stuff anymore. So people are not buying physical copies of things. So yeah, they're selling fewer of these things. Therefore, you make less money. That's how this works. Okay? That's how this works. Now, in terms of the rate, he said that the rate was about 12%. I don't know. It's probably somewhere more like it's somewhere between 8 and 12%, if we're being honest. When you take into account that the talent doesn't have any of the costs that comes with creating, maintaining, marketing a product, 12 to 15%, or 8 to 15% or something like that actually sounds pretty fair. I know that it can get pretty bad, like in the music business. It gets really bad on how much artists used to make per album sold. It used to be absolutely ridiculous. But again, you have to take into account how the company takes all the risk. And by what the risk I mean is, who makes the t-shirt? Does Ryback make the t-shirt, or does WWE make the t-shirt? Well, WWE made the t-shirt. Who is marketing the t-shirt? Basically, who's responsible for delivering the t-shirt to the customer? Who is responsible for the quality of the t-shirt? Not Ryback, it's WWE. Not the wrestler. The wrestler is not responsible. Unless they're selling their own gimmicks like an indie wrestler, you're not responsible for the quality of your t-shirt. The distributor is, the manufacturer is, and all that's going to be WWE. So who else is going to be responsible for maintaining a certain volume of the t-shirts? Well, WWE is. Somebody has to warehouse all these t-shirts, especially the unsold shirts. Who's going to do that? The talent? Are you going to take boxes and boxes and boxes of unsold Ryback t-shirts and put them in your basement? No, WWE has to find somewhere to house that stuff, and all that shit costs money. It all comes with costs. So if you are a talent that sells a lot of gimmicks, WWE will give you a big cut of those gimmicks. And we know that because they do that even with lower card guys who get over and sell a bunch of merchandise, whether it's masks like a Rey Mysterio stuff, or the little sock puppet Cobra for Santino Marella, or those kinds of things. In addition to action figures, video games, they make money off of all that stuff too. Anything that's associated with their character. You know, you can make a decent living, but if you're not an active roster talent, as a matter of fact, if you're a legend, you know, like a Mick Foley or Kurt Angle or somebody like that, then you already are in trouble, because unless you have a Legends deal and they're actively making action figures and putting you in the video game, you're probably not going to make that much money. Now, also, the video games used to be a huge source of revenue for wrestlers too. There was, you know, stories about guys making $100,000 off of being in one video game, you know, or even more than that. And all they did was be in a video game. But you have to take into account that's back when video games were physically sold. Royalties in all industries have yet to catch up to a non-digital era. If anything, that is a good point out of the whole royalty conversation, is what do we do about non-physical copies of things? This has been the bone of contention. And until Hollywood figures it out, WWE is not going to be on a rush to figure it out. But royalties are based off of selling physical copies of things. And since they no longer sell physical copies of things, the numbers of these things have drastically gone down. They don't sell video games as much as they used to. They don't sell DVDs like they used to. So the money that was in those industries have gone down. Now, maybe the rate needs to go up because the volume has gone down. So maybe instead of giving a talent 8 to 10% off of a DVD, maybe it needs to be 15 to 20% because of the low volume of DVDs sold. That may make it a little bit more palatable for the talent, but you're still looking at the company who probably said, well, we could just stop making DVDs and you'll make nothing out of this whole ordeal. But again, if you look over Ryback's big bald head, you won't see any action figures. You won't see any video games. You won't see anything else. Just his appearances on other people's DVDs. And you have to ask the question, what the hell is that worth? What is Ryback's worth on a WrestleMania 29 DVD? Well, we're about to go into WrestleMania 40 here. That thing is over a decade old. And they're still selling DVDs of it in 2023. You ought to be lucky you're getting anything. You're lucky that thing is still on the shelf. You know, that's a collector's item right now. The same thing with like the Batista Unleashed DVD, which I saw was on there. The Shield DVD. Those DVDs are old. The Batista DVD is really old. And for somehow he's still getting royalties for either appearing on them and some maybe doing an interview or something like that he did on there. Or maybe he wrestled in a match that's in a compilation or something. You know, he may get money off of that. But he's complaining about an extra $300 that he didn't have to work for without looking into and without being honest with the audience and saying, I don't work there. They can't make anything off of my name because I own it. I won't sign a contract to let them make anything off of my name. So this is all passive income. This $289 or whatever is 100% income that he didn't have to work for. They pressed the DVDs. They marketed the DVDs. They sold them. They shipped them. All you did was sit back and collect an invoice. What exactly did you do to earn that $289? Nothing. You did nothing. So you could complain about how little it is, and you're probably right to do so. But you're not going to get any of my sympathy because, honestly, you did nothing to earn that. So it's nice to see that Ryback and Maven are essentially saying the same thing, except Maven seems to be a little bit more intelligent and understanding that business has changed, especially since the last time he was in it. He hasn't been there in a really long time, even longer than Ryback. But he has noted, the network killed DVDs. And that was where the money was. And the video games, same thing. As more people buy games that are not physical, the points per unit have been affected. But this also creates an incentive. The incentive for WWE is to induce these guys to sign Legends contracts and different things where WWE can use their name, image, and likeness. Now, they have a contentious relationship with Ryback. Who cares about him, really? But a lot of the older guys, the Honky Tonk Man, Kevin Nash, etc., they can't monetize the NWO, anywhere else. Like, what can Kevin Nash take NWO and go to AEW and get a better deal? No. The intellectual property is owned by WWE. So he's incentivized to come up with some kind of deal between him and WWE where they can continue to sell NWO merchandise and he can maximize his royalties and do so in a way that's fair. So again, I do believe that they probably need to increase the rate of royalty, but I don't see what the big deal is if it's fully explained and understood that royalties are still being based off of points per unit and we are in a different economy. That needs to change. Somebody needs to have the conversation that we no longer can worry about points per unit. Are you sitting back making 50 t-shirts? How much I'm going to make off of 50 t-shirts? Yeah, you can still do that. But in action figures, you can still do that because those are still physical items. But DVDs, how many people watch WrestleMania, all that kind of stuff? You could do, I think, what they do in Hollywood, which is what I've heard they've done in wrestling. I can't confirm because I wasn't there. Is that guys get paid up front, and then that basically covers, you get one lump sum for appearing at WrestleMania or whatever, and you get no royalties because it's going to be on the network and easily accessible to everybody. Or you're going to create a situation, and we've talked about this before, where they're going to try to create a points per unit and apply it to the network or apply it to something like that, where every time you click WrestleMania 13, everybody that's on the card is going to get something. If you do that, what they're going to do is take off everything old. I mean, it's still a business at the end of the day. All right. It's still a business. If they see that people are just going to jack up the costs by just running random shows to give Chief Jay Strongbow some royalties or whatever the fuck, they're just going to cut that off. They're just going to get rid of it. You got to think about how many wrestlers are on a show and what kind of contract that wrestler may have had and what that would mean in terms of royalties. Like, all of that is a logistical nightmare. Let's keep it simple. If there are 8 matches on the show, and then there are 2 people in each match, and probably including the referee, and who knows, the commentators, the ring announcer, who knows how many other people are going to be involved with backstage skits and et cetera, et cetera. If you increase the cost of them having that show available, they will get rid of that show. All right. It's that simple. If you continue to increase the cost of that show being accessible, they'll just get rid of it. And if you're a fan, and I know people like to think that they're naturally on the side of the wrestler, but you're not. Just like in any other business venture, you can't quote unquote, pick a side. You can only understand what's going on and then hope for a better outcome. That's why I say I'm not pro wrestler. I'm not pro WWE either. I'm pro let's try to find a way where everybody can get most of what they want. Because if you try to go ham and say, well, the wrestler needs to form a union, well, guess what? You're going to end up fucking the audience, and you're going to end up costing a lot of wrestlers their jobs, and you're going to end up costing a lot of people access to really good classic content. That's just off rip. I already know that stuff is going to happen. If you are pro company, then you're going to fuck the wrestlers, especially when they get older and they can no longer make any money. You're going to end up fucking them over. Guys like Mick Foley, guys like Sting, guys like Kurt Angle, they're in their 50s. They're not going to go out there and have another run. They're not wrestling again. So they need something coming in that's passive that can at least pay the light bill. You know, that $200 can at least pay the water bill or help on the water bill or something like that. You know, it ain't going to send you to Cancun. But, you know, if you don't have to worry about paying your cell phone bill that month, I'm pretty sure that's a big thumbs up. There needs to be a better way of understanding things because business cannot be done emotionally. You cannot emotionally jump into business decisions and start saying, well, my heart bleeds for the wrestler, so we should do this, this, and this because the company is worth billions of dollars. And you have to think about it. They actually pump out billions of dollars too. It's not just things happen and then money is generated. There's plenty of business ventures that they get involved with, t-shirts that don't sell, video games that don't sell as much as other video games, action figures that they are made that don't sell, okay? Posters, cards, different things like that do not sell. And you have to take that stuff into account. And if you're going to continuously increase that, just like there's plenty of stuff on the network nobody will ever touch, all right? But if you make the cost of having that stuff there, then the few people who do sit back and watch wrestling from the 70s, you're going to fuck that person because you're like, oh, well, we're going to increase the cost of the existence or access to this thing. Now, they could easily do what some people have suggested or what some heartless companies have suggested, which is put big shows behind paywalls and then guys can get royalties. You want WrestleMania behind a paywall? Nobody does. You want to be able to pay for Peacock and then get WrestleMania for free. Well, I can see Endeavor saying, well, all these guys are complaining. Guess what? We'll put WrestleMania behind a $50 paywall and you get Peacock. So that means you'll get WrestleMania eventually, but you'll get it a month later. And then they'll start doing it to other pay-per-views too. SummerSlam, Royal Rumble or whatever. And they'll just start calling what's called an upcharge. You'll go in there, you'll have your subscription, you'll have access to all the classic content, but all the new pay-per-views, they'll charge an upcharge, $30, $50 or whatever, and then maybe by units sold or per units purchased, guys can get royalties. Do you want to do that? Because I don't. I don't want to pay more for this shit than I have to, and you don't either. So all of these people who are talking about, oh, the talent are getting fucked, do you want to pay more for this shit? Or are you not really a fan anyway, and you're just an evil businessman? It's like, well, you have to think about things more than just one way. All right? There's more than one way to split the baby. Either they're going to upcharge you because that's where the money comes from. The money comes from you. And it's like a river. You know, you follow a river long enough, you lead to the ocean. You know? And you're the fucking ocean. You're the person that if you follow a trail of money enough, you'll lead it back to some fans. So either you're going to be paying more for t-shirts, paying more for action figures, paying more for the network, or whatever, and losing access because that's just kind of how things are. Ticket prices going up, all that kind of stuff. You could do that to yourself if you want to, but this is when you realize that the wrestlers and the fans are not natural allies in terms of business. It's the same as any other business. People talk about these things emotionally because you're talking about them as it occurs, you know, as in reality. You'll realize that when they go out on the picket line and they claim, I should make more money, you say, okay, is that going to increase the cost of cars? Because that's what's going on right here in the United States right now is all these auto unions are on strike. It's going to increase the cost of the automobile. So who's going to be able to afford cars? Nobody answered that question. You're supposed to just feel bad, all right? Just feel bad because they make so much more money. And it's like, well, they take on a lot more risk. There's this guy, Robert Reich, here in the United States. He used to be the Department of Labor, Secretary of Labor. And he was on Twitter tweeting about how much more money a CEO of Ford or whatever makes more than the average worker. And then, that's emotional manipulation, because you don't take into account how much more risk the CEO is under, how much more authority he has, how many more responsibilities that he has. So many people leave their job, turn their phone off. They don't even think about job anymore. CEOs have to be on call at 3 a.m. If you're asleep and something's on fire, you have to get up and go see what's going on. Meanwhile, if you're a punch the clock kind of guy, you can just roll over if the motherfucker is on fire. It's not your problem. If the company does not sell 100 cars, then you can just continue to go to work, and, well, that's their problem. Meanwhile, the CEO has to figure out why they're not selling any cars. If the cars are falling apart, if they blow up, you can say, well, it's just my job to put a headlight on this thing. It ain't my job to figure out why it's exploding. It's the CEO's fault to figure it out. So it's the same thing in every industry. CEOs, bosses, the company, they incur so much more risk, and they put out far more money than you really see. And that's why they make more. That's why they have to take a bigger cut, because they have to take into account all of the risk that they put into a product. And that's every product, not just one product. That's also a points per unit situation. Every car, comic book, video game, movie, or whatever that is produced comes with tons of fucking risk. It comes with an investment, and people want that money back. All right? That's for everybody. The best deal for it's not going to be a 50-50 split, because the responsibilities and costs are not split 50-50. Now, I don't know what fair is in any context. You have to do a little bit more digging to figure out what is a fairer outcome in any context. But looking into the overall story of things like royalties and pay, you have to take into account how much money is being spent, what is your responsibility, what is the accountability on your behalf, what are you accountable for, if you screw up, what could possibly happen, versus if somebody else screws up. And that's going to be a lot of how much you should be paid and what's a fair rate for you to be paid. Because if you screw up something, there's a low amount of risk to it, versus if somebody else screws up, there's a lot of risk to it. It's a completely different ball game. And it's the same thing with royalties. You didn't produce anything. The royalties are all about passive income anyway. And everybody who complains wants to have more passive income. And that's perfectly fine. The issue is you have to figure out how that income is created, what happened to it, and how you might be able to get more of it in a rapidly shrinking economy. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.